Here we go. You see my screen, guys?
We do.
Great. And let me start. Welcome to the second episode of the Apex World on Air show. And let me start with this. Woo! What do you think? Isn't it great? Thanks to Ryan Risley, he made the trailer for us. Great work. And I think, Scott, do you remember something?
Do I remember what?
Yeah, do you recognize anything from the trailer?
Was that part of what I had sent you? Because it was very laggy. It was laggy here, that's why.
We started completely differently. We had a completely different idea, and then you popped in and sent us this world, with the spinning world, and said, okay, that's where we have to start completely over. And yeah, it's nice music. I'm very happy.
Reminiscent of the old Daily Show intro. I like it.
So the agenda for today is, the topic for today is work like a pro, and we think everybody is showing a little pro tip, 5 minutes, the thing he likes most, working with Apex every day. And then we have already pre-posted questions, because right now you can already pre-post your questions through the feedback in apex.world, but please register before, because otherwise if I get a nobody, it's hard to answer to that. And we have open discussions, of course, so please feel free to join in the discussion through the chat here. Do you see the chat right now? Because I see it all the time. So you don't just see my screen, right? My slide. Do you see anything but my slide?
Nope.
Oh, okay, great, because I see all the chats too. Okay, so please feel free to join the discussion. Let me start with Apex World News. We have some. There's a new podcast episode out. Go to Apex World, Community, Apex Talk Show, then you get redirected to this page and look who we have. It was we recorded it in August, right? And we were in the middle. We were in the middle of doing Apex World, so it took a very long time to get this done now, and it's already out on iTunes. So we have now seven podcasts out there, and we could only do this with the help of Jeff. He volunteered to do the cutting, because the cutting takes so much time. And thank you, Jeff. We can all thank Jeff, because without him, I don't think we could go on with producing podcasts. And now we are back on schedule, and we hope we get out one every month. We still got one in the pipeline, and there is a very interesting one to come next week in Apex World, Apex Connect. In Apex Connect in Berlin, we will have a special edition of the podcast with Mike Hitchwa and 9 other famous community members, so it's going to be very interesting. Thanks, Jeff. We have a new Apex World team member, which is Monica Godoy from Colombia, and she takes care of this presentation resources. Then we have a new member of the month, which is Alias Mali. I hope I pronounced the name right. And I guess, Martin, you can say something more about that, what he did. I looked at it and I found it impressive.
Yeah, so Alias has been working on this project for a while, actually, before Joel actually introduced him to me, and it was a project that works with the Oracle, I forget the main website for the translations, or apextranslations.com, but he's now creating an app to help.
Come on,
I have to jump in here. We can't forget what that is. It's translate-apex.com.
Okay, so translate. So it's been a while I used it. So he's written an app that works in conjunction. So it's with Predis. They're the ones who created that app, and he created it to help you manage and edit your own text messages. It's a really cool app. He's put a lot of time and effort into it, and so please check it out on opensource.com and the GitHub page.
Congrats, alias, well deserved. Well done. Then we have now the recorded on-air shows. You can go to the recorded shows through Community, Apex World on Air, and there's a playlist for the on-air show or everything which is published by Apex World. And thanks ODTUG for doing this. They record that and put the trailer in front of it, and thank you very much. And there is a new functionality. Let me show it you live. We have integrated the forum. And here we go. You see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So, you know, this is everything familiar. We got the Slack panel on the left, but now we can here switch to the forum view. And here we go. We show the latest 25 Apex forum threads, and they are updated every 5 minutes. And you see if there are any replies and who replied at last. So it was a little bit tricky. Thanks for Michael Dürbeck, who did the front end, and Carsten Czarski, who did the back end, I guess, in 10 minutes or something like that. This guy is amazing. Yeah, I hope it's still in development, and we tested a little bit, and then we will publish it just right before Apex Connect.
How come nobody's helped this guy with the no data found message?
Yeah, let me. But there's an interesting discussion going on. Though we have 1 replies here, and we have 9 replies here. So you can.
Hold on, was that Dan's own message that he's trying to get the free help on it?
So I'm pretty confident that we get more traffic now back on the forum, because we have a lot of traffic in Slack, and it's running very well on Slack. And I'm answering questions when I see them, and I can answer it quickly. But I never go I have to admit, I never go to the forum just to see, oh, what's going on there, and can I answer any question. I never do that, because I have to invoke it, and I don't have the time. But right now, when I just can switch in Apex World to the forum and see, oh, that's a question I can answer right now. So I hope the forum benefits a lot from this new functionality. Yes, this is all from my side, and let me pass to Martin.
All right.
Do I have to do something, or?
Change present. Let me just change it to myself here. Oh, wow,
Okay, you can do that.
I can change it to you, Martin.
I think I just did. Can you guys? What screen do you see? My screen?
Yep.
What do you see? Do you see the web page?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to show is something called Apex Front-End Boost. Now, this was developed by Vincent Morneau and sponsored by Insum. He did a webinar on this earlier this week, and we were kind of capped at 100 users, so I know a lot of people tried to subscribe and see what it was all about, but weren't able to. It's a small glitch on our end, and we look to rectify that with another webinar. But what I'll do is give a very short, brief intro of it and how it can help your Apex development. So right now in Apex, the recommended approach is actually to go into your application, and really a lot of people, what they do is they go and just put it to 160 here in my app. What they go and they write a lot of custom inline CSS in JavaScript, or if they also use the shared component file perspective and you upload files, it's a real pain in the butt, because every time you change the file, you have to go to your file system, upload it, save it, refresh the page, etc. So Apex Frontend Boost aims to get rid of all of that in terms of allowing you to develop from your desktop regardless of where the server is. So I'm going to show you on my local server, but this could be on apex.oracle.com because it really doesn't matter, because what happens is we launch a local web server. And the other cool thing is the changes I'm going to show you are all local to my computer. So the first thing is, in Firefox here, I want you to pay close attention. Pretend this is what everyone else sees. They see this nice blue text here. And I'm just going to launch Apex Frontend Boost. It uses Node.js. All of this is documented on the website. You'll see it launches a new window, and now this is local to me. Now this looks very similar. Everyone sees that it's in Chrome. It looks very similar to the Firefox version, except now what it's doing is it's actually pulling the data from my local file system. And here I've got this, and I'm going to this CSS, and I'm just going to change it to green. Right? And I'm going to hit Control-S to save, and you notice it changed automatically. Right? I can change it to red, and it changed automatically. It actually didn't even do a refresh. Now the cool thing about this is if I go back into Firefox, which is what everyone else is seeing, they don't see my changes. It still remains blue. And the main advantage of this, CSS is one thing, but especially when you're working on JavaScript and you like to put in all these consoles or alerts or try a bunch of stuff that can really shred your app, you do not ruin everyone else. You only affect yourself. And this is a huge development game. Dan?
Are you advocating developing in production?
I'm not saying develop. No, if you have multiple developers in a development app, right? Sometimes people are developing with this like massive JavaScript file, for instance. Like if you have a large team file, and you may want to change a certain function, you can work on that function entirely on your own without affecting anyone else.
So this is still all dev. Okay, I'm with you.
It's all dev. I'm not pushing this in prod. I would not recommend this to prod at all.
But you could, right?
You could.
So nobody gets hurt when you do it just locally.
Yeah, but some of the recommended things we turn on to make this happen in Apex, we say only put it on in development mode. Do not put this on in production. It's just we're not recommending this at all to go past the development stage. So I'm going to show you one other thing, and just to really drive home the point of the JavaScript stuff and how it can help you out. So I'm just going to show, okay, so if you notice the console here, actually let's look at Firefox, and where's my Firebug? Okay, so let me log in as what everyone sees. So I'll show you, I showed you the CSS, and again, very, very basic example. And now I'm going to show you how JavaScript's working. If you know, let me just refresh the page. So this is what everyone else sees. And you'll notice that they just see this demo file and Apex static files. Now if I go back to my personal Apex frontend boost, I've got this same JavaScript file, but I put in demo, and I'll just put live from Apex on air. And I'm going to save it, right? I'm not touching the Chrome screen. If I hit Control-S, you'll notice that it automatically refreshes the page for me. And now you can see this live demo on air at the bottom. So this it saves a couple of click strokes too, because not only do you have to save this file, go back here, refresh, it auto-detects all that. And you should have noticed that this kind of, this screen here that runs Apex front end changed, right? I'll make another change here, another change, and if I hit Control-S, you'll notice that it just updated to show that a change was made. So these are really powerful tools that can really improve and speed up your development of front end Apex. So that's all I've got to do.
Is it an open source project?
It is on open source, 100%. If you go to GitHub on the Aura open source page, and it's called Apex Frontend Boost.
Will this work with? Have you tested it with plugins?
That's a good question. It depends on how you reference your plugin files, your image directory. But we may need to take that offline to discuss that. In theory, we could. It all depends on how you reference your images. That's the key thing.
Yeah, yeah.
It probably,
very cool.
Yeah. Anything else, or is there any questions from the audience? I don't see any questions coming in.
Well, we can do that afterwards. I would
Okay.
say.
Very cool.
Don't you want to show us text expander?
Oh yes, text expander. I didn't know if I was going over time, but I'll show it quick. So a lot of people, what they do is, let's say you want to raise an application error. PL/SQL. So you'd write something like raise application error, and then you go -2001 and some message. Right? We've all written this sort of code over and over again, but that's a complete waste of time because it's repetitive code. So there's something called a text expander. Now there's different tools for Mac and Windows. Just Google text expander. That's not the name of the app, that's the type of app. And so I've got this thing where I just type in O error, and all of a sudden it writes the same thing. I've got it set up so every time I create a new procedure, I write an O proc. Let me spell properly. And all of a sudden I've got my entire procedure structure set up. So this sets up saves a lot of time when developing common things, like if I want to reference the Apex dictionary, I go adic, and there's my Apex dictionary. If I want to see, for instance, I can never remember the Apex URL, I type in a URL, and there we go. So I've got all these different things. Imagine snippets with a shortcut, and it's available. The cool thing with the text expander is that it's available in all the apps. So if I run this in Firefox, in SQL Developer, it doesn't matter. So I know the tools like SQL Developer and Atom and Sublime all have these built in, but a operating system level text expander is a lot better because you can use it across all your applications. It's the same.
Do you have a, you say it's just a type text expander. I guess there's an application now called text expander too, right? What kind of application do you really use?
I use something called atext, and the reason why I use atext, I was actually talking to Jorge Rimblas about this. He uses text expander for Mac. Is this main thing of I can prefix. I don't know if you can see it, but for all my JavaScript things, I put J to, so I can prefix the folder with a letter or anything I want, so that there's no interference between JavaScript to-dos and Oracle to-dos. And I'll really highlight this. So if I have a to-do comment, I write O to-do, and that's my Oracle stuff. But if I'm in JavaScript, I write J to-do. And that's what I found makes a huge difference with having atext over text expander.
So this isn't specific to an editor. This is an operating system feature?
Yes. Yes, and you can do it. Most text editors support something like this. They put snippets with hotkeys. However, I like it at an operating system level because, again, if I open up anything, right, in SQL Developer, for instance, I may have something that I type olog5, and it brings all my logger stuff up. This, again, it's significantly, I mean, we can quantify it to the amount of money it saves and time. So anything I repetitively write, I do it, but I want it across all the operating systems. For instance, I like it to have it in the browser. In some cases, I only have access to SQL Workshop, and in those cases, I want to have the same shortcuts available in SQL Workshop and Apex that I do in have an Atom and in SQL Developer.
Sure.
Where do we get the shortcuts?
The shortcuts I made up, it's anything you repetitively type, right? And all developers have things they repetitively type.
But you have nice one. You have very nice one. I didn't understand the question.
We could do this on a blog post. I don't want to maintain them. I know Text Expander has like these team sharing things, but for now, it's really up to you, right? How I view something is very different how you view something.
It looks nice.
I use Text Expander. I always do 2 dashes to preference shortcuts, so I never run into the issue if I'm typing a word that happens to be a shortcut. But I'll do things like --cell will be my cell phone. --GTM is a standard GoToMeeting invite I send out to people. So it's not just for code. It could be just for standard stuff too.
Good idea, yeah.
Address, puts my address there, so if I'm filling out a form and I need it, things like that. Plus, it also synchronizes via Dropbox. So I have it on my MacBook, I have it on my iMac. Wherever my Dropbox account is, I could always grab them.
Just to highlight Scott's comment, I don't ever type my own name. I just type MDE or MGD for my full name. I don't even type in my email address. I write MD or IMD, and there we go. So I never type anything that's repetitive. But these are not code specific. These are just repetitive things I do.
Okay, cool.
Nice. So let's pass to Scott anyway. And Scott, you're using TextExpander, the product itself, right?
Yeah, I use TextExpander. I haven't seen Atex or heard of it, but it's interesting. It's got a little bit different functionality than TextExpander. But for the most part, I mean, they're all pretty much the same, I would imagine. I did run into, I had to comment out a snippet of code yesterday that started with work. So I did -- work, and it kept replacing it with my phone number. So you could run into that scenario. You had to actually type, I had to spell work wrong and then backspace over it and then put it back in. So I wanted to show something really simple, but I've found it to be very instrumental in building Apex apps, and it's Xplug for Apex 5. Both Chrome and Firefox are supported. This is the URL. I'll pop this in the chat in just a second here. It's written by Philippe, who I believe is out of Germany somewhere. I could be wrong here. But I found this searching for stuff, and it has become my #1 go-to plugin for Apex development. And there's one simple reason, is right now what I could do is dock the grid on the right-hand side. I think this is a huge improvement. Most of the time when you're building stuff, the layout gets done. It's sort of, I don't want to say inconsequential, but you do that either first or you do that last. It's going from here to here, right? Editing an item and finding the preference of the item. Going into a region and finding the option of the region that you want to set. I find just using 50% of the screen, going back and forth there, is just a lot faster than having to go all the way across, right? And I'm on my laptop now, so it's a smaller monitor. Expand that out to a 27-inch monitor, and you're just adding mileage to your mouse. You really are. So that's just one of the things that I like that it does. Another thing it brings back is the ability to go to the next and the previous page.
Yeah, like that.
Yes, you can come here. There's nothing wrong with coming here and doing it, but there's something maybe nostalgic or maybe just simple that I want to go through the list here. Now, what it is doing, I believe it's kind of scraping this screen. So if you create a new page and you haven't revisited that first page, you may not get that page showing up in line here. There's a nighttime mode, which I'm not a fan of, but it'll kind of tone down the colors. But one thing that I am a fan of is that you can actually pick your own style, or you can customize the colors. So I could come in here, and if I wanted to create a new set of colors for the builder, I can override what they have. One of the things that I always override is this back gray, light gray color. It's just too light, especially if you're on a laptop and you're kind of not looking at it directly. So quite often I'll come in here and find out where that color is and change it to something a little darker, maybe this blue here, maybe this light blue here, just so visually there's more separation in that middle panel there. So it's a neat little plugin. It's free, open source, I believe. You can download it from here, and I will drop this link into the chat so everybody can see it and go grab it.
Very cool.
Nice. But I think the panel left-right thing we get in Apex 5.1 too, right, Joe?
Yes, Juergen, I think so. Sorry, I had to unmute.
Yeah, I think I heard Patrick talking about it in Vienna in a meetup, and he said, yeah, he will bring this in 5.1.
Right, but until 5.1, people who are going to be on 5 for a while, today, it definitely makes sense. Plus the next and previous buttons, I think are nice to have back.
Yeah, I like that. I miss them too. So, such an amazing IDE, so much thing, and we just miss such a simple thing, like back and forth.
I have to turn it off sometimes. There's a known issue where if you're trying to arrange items when you have this all the way on the right-hand side, it has a hard time adding it to the same row, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that's not enough to not use it. I just add it to the row before and then tweak the property to bring it up one row. But that is sort of an issue that it does have right now. One other thing that you could do, I forgot, is disable the tooltips. Quite often, as you're moving around, the tooltips will pop up, and then sometimes they'll stay, and they just kind of get in the way. So you can turn that off as well. So now, as I go through, I can hover over stuff, and it's not going to show me the tip.
Nice.
So
Well
2 or
done.
3 little things, you know, it's a great little utility, and I definitely recommend checking it out.
Thanks.
Nice.
Joe, do you have something for us?
I do, as a matter of fact. Can I share my screen?
Hey, Juergen, just to let you know, we do have some questions coming in both on front-end boost and Xplug, so I guess we can take care of these after.
I don't see them, to be honest. Where are they?
They're in the questions section. I don't know if you have access to that.
Yes, yes. They are not in the chat.
No.
So, okay, but let's
You want to go to the questions? Or should I go ahead, Martin?
let's first finish our little demos, right?
Yeah. But yeah, by the way, I thought this is fantastic. I already downloaded Text Expander for Mac, which I think is great, and some of the UI improvements with Xplug is great. So I find this enlightening as well. Okay, the one thing, the one tip I want to show, this won't be new to everybody, but you might have paid attention to Martin's text expansion for querying the Apex dictionary. And I wanted to highlight something that maybe not everybody knows about the Apex views. And as people know, when you build Apex applications, in effect you're recording this information, the definition of your app in a catalog. And you can browse the Apex views directly in Application Express. So if you go into Workspace Utilities, Application
I didn't see your
Views.
screen, Joe.
You've got to share your screen, Joe.
Dude, I am.
There's a play button.
Okay. Wow.
There you go.
Should I begin up until now? Listen carefully.
Sure.
Right. So I'll expedite this here. I'm going to go into Workspace Utilities. I'm going to click Application Express Views, and you can interrogate effectively all these views, right? So for example, there's a view called Apex Applications. I can choose what columns I want to show in my result here. I can apply some filtering, and I can look at my results, which will effectively run my query. And you can see that I'm here in a workspace called Joel Apex World, and the result of this query is, one row. No differently than if I go to SQL Workshop here, and I click on SQL Commands, and if I say select star from Apex Applications, see, I could use your text expander here, and I'm running this on apex.oracle.com, and of course it's going to show that I have only one row here, right? Because if I go into Application Builder, and I can see I only have one app, Apex World Demo. If I run this application, you can actually build Apex applications on any of these views. For example, what I just did, these queries with Apex applications, I have a simple report here that all it's doing is selecting from that very same view. There's a activity log. Most people don't know there's a view called the Apex Workspace Log Archive, which it does some aggregation every day for all workspaces and all applications. So you don't have to go live against the hot activity log. You can get this summarization, and it's in this view, Apex Workspace Log Archive. And we can see querying by the last 7 days. I really instantiated this yesterday, so I only have one row here. And then if I use my fancy bubble chart, okay, the only application I have is the one I'm running, application 106,633. Big deal.
Fancy.
Yeah, pretty fancy, right? I figured you'd be impressed. Yeah. But what most people don't know is they say, well, that's great, but how about if I want to, if I have a runtime instance and I want to do monitoring of the activity on the instance for my apps, or better yet, across all applications on the instance. How do you do that? Because there's no web interface, there's no Apex Builder interface on a runtime instance. And there is a role called Apex Administrator role. It's a database role, and if you grant it to a database user or parsing schema, if you will, of your workspace, you can now get access to the entire catalog. Because when I was querying Apex applications, it was against my workspace. But now if I go in, and again, this is on apex.oracle.com, I'm simply going to grant Apex Administrator role. So if I go back to my applications page here, we're going to see, okay, just my single application. Now I'm going to do my grant via SQL Plus on apex.oracle.com. Do my grant, I hit go again. It's going to take a little bit longer because I have more to query. So now I'm looking at all 28,500 applications, applications across all 28,500 workspaces. If I wanted to look at my report now, and again, just by simple Apex Administrator role granted to my parsing schema for my workspace, I can look at, I don't want to give away too much information here, but we can see Ask Tom for the last 7 days has some of the highest page events. And just likewise, I can go do my activity log chart here. I can drill down, now filter back to my report, say, oh yeah, this is Ask Tom for the last, what was the period of time here? I did a summarization of the last 7 days, but I can go to each one of these, right? 3844 is, believe it or not, JDeveloper, their check for updates goes through apex.oracle.com. So my quick tip for everybody, in case you didn't know it, is it's very easy to create monitoring applications for effectively any environment that doesn't require the application builder.
Right. Didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know it, Juergen?
No, I didn't know it.
Oh, okay, great.
It was worth it to attend the seminar. So for me.
Can I throw in one little other piece about the Apex views, Joel?
Please.
So a lot of times, and we do training classes, people will talk about the views, and then they look at me like, okay, but those, you know, I could just go to the builder and I could see all the stuff. One relevant example that we talk about is, you know, how would you start, say, locking down who could see which page in an app? So you could go through and, you know, if I've got 10 pages, I could create a table and I could add 10 rows to that table, page 1, 2, 3 through 10. And then I can build an authorization scheme that says if I'm mapped to this row in the table, I can't see the page. Problem is what happens when you add the 11th page or the 12th page or you remove a page, right? So if you use the Apex views in your app, you could build an admin screen that says give Scott access to page 5, and page 5 is basically coming from Apex application pages. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to add it. It's all there. And then if I add page 10, all of a sudden I see page 10, I see page 11. So it's a good tool for developers to use, and that's just one of 100 different ways to use it for locking down, and it could be at a page level, it could be at a region level. This can be built into your app or built into another app that manages your app so that you don't have to constantly change code and change authorization scheme definitions, which in a lot of organizations triggers a push out to prod, QA, things like that. So the app becomes much more self-managing.
Can I add on top of that? Actually, what we do sometimes is, for instance, if we need to make this change and make sure it's across or there's a UI format or something, we just write dev-only pages that only show up in development environment that give us quick reports of things that are missing. So we essentially have a self-documenting or self-checklist application. It's almost like the Apex Advisor, but we do it for our customizations, and it saves a ton of time. We don't no longer wonder what's missing. We know what's missing or what needs to be done.
Nice. Dan.
Sorry, I know people keep on adding, but I'm just going to give one quick plug here. There is a package application called Standards Tracker. So if you have a fleet of Apex applications, you could write queries that reference the Apex dictionary views themselves. So you can define a rule set and have these queries run across your applications. In particular, looking for omissions or enforcing consistency across your application. So this flows very well with the Standards Tracker package app. Okay, sorry, Juergen, I'm done now.
No problem. That's why we're here. Dan, your turn. Can you get the screen?
Sure.
How do you do that, by the way?
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
All right. So I apologize for not having lowered my resolution prior to starting this. Hopefully everyone's able to see what I'm seeing here. So on the left, I have a browser open and pointed to GitHub or open source. And on the right, I have the NetBeans IDE, which is an IDE that I'm really trying to get into this year. Admittingly, I don't have enough time to really learn the features as well as I should. A lot of folks I think on this call are probably in favor of Sublime over a full-blown IDE like NetBeans, but myself, I prefer the IDE approach. So what I wanted to show is how you can participate in the development of these open source projects, because it's great when folks are doing this work for us, but oftentimes the folks doing the work are really keen to get some help from the community. And it doesn't have to be any big code changes. Oftentimes it's just documentation and things like that can go a long way in helping others benefit. So since Martin started off with the Apex Front-End Boost, what I'll do is I'll go into Apex Front-End Boost, and all you really need to do is have a GitHub account. So once you have that in place, you can see the code, and I'm logged in. So what I can do is fork this repo, and I'll put it into my main GitHub account. And so it's copying that repo essentially and then putting it under my account within GitHub. And what I can do now, I can come to this URL here, and I can just click this link to copy it to the clipboard, and we'll bring that over and into NetBeans. So within NetBeans, I'm going to click on Team, Git, Clone, and I've already did this a little earlier as a quick demo, so that's why it's in here. But normally you would just paste in that URL that you just copied, put in your credentials for GitHub, and then you can step through the wizard, looking at various branches, seeing where the new project is going to end up, that kind of thing. We'll go ahead and create that and then open it up. So you can see now I have this new project, and we can view all the files just like you're seeing them here. Maybe we go into lib, we take a look at this util.js, and as a JavaScript purist, we realized that maybe this could be a little bit better, so I changed this around. So this is empty object, and before it was not keys length. Maybe I'm going to say object keys length is equal to 0, right? So once I've made my change, I can actually click on this history. This is one of the things I really enjoy about NetBeans. Every time you're in a file, you can go to this history button and see local changes as well as changes from the source control repository that you're using. So I just made this change right now. We can see the diff, get through that. Once everything looks good, we can go back to team, and we can commit this change. So this is a major change and is empty object. We can commit that, and if we're happy with our changes, what we then can do is go back to team, and then we go to remote, and we can go to push. So with Git, we've made our changes into a local copy of the repo, and now we're going to push our changes back out to GitHub. And if I refresh this now, we should see this was a major change and is empty object. So this is in GitHub. This is in my fork of that repo. And if we drill into that and drill into util.js, you'll see my change here. So once this is the way we want it, we got to get this back into the main repository, which is in or open source repository. And the way we would do that, if we're happy with our changes, is go back to our repo and just click this button for new pull request, and you'll see the differences between what's currently in the main repo and what we're trying to add or remove to it. And then you just click this button, create pull request. That'll send the request over to the maintainers in or open source, and they can then review the changes and choose to accept them or not. So this is my pro tip. It's really a call to action for the attendees to feel free to participate. Again, even if it's just documentation, I'm sure that'll go a long way in helping others get into this tech. Thanks.
Thanks, man. Very nice. Now I'm not afraid anymore of GitHub. Martin.
Yeah. One other thing, if you don't want to use NetBeans, it's a really cool tool. I didn't know you can do the local diffs right there, which is really nice. One of the most popular tools people use as a GUI is, it's called SourceTree from Atlassian. I don't know if it's open source, but it's definitely free. And so they manage that. It's a really good UI tool for Git. If you use Subversion and you use Tortoise, it's a very similar type of application. And one other thing to add on top of Dan, how you can help, I'll make it even one step easier. Even if you don't want to code or add documentation, at least create issues. If you see a bug, create an issue. If you see, even it could be the bug in the documentation, right? You may not be able to fix it, at least let us know. And any feature request, if you want to do things. That's, believe it or not, how we actually find out what to put in the entire application and suite of applications. So highly recommended, and all it takes too is 2 minutes to create an issue, and then a lot of people will do the rest for you.
Great. Now let me show a quick tip. Show my screen. Okay. I try to hurry up a little bit. So what I very much like is I'm very much into dynamic actions and a simple use case. You have a report, customer, for example, in the sample application. And here in the customer name, the customer ID is always hidden, so you don't see it in the front end. So that's not a problem because I just put in here a little span and put the customer ID in front of the customer name. So this gives me at the end, when I drill down here in the sample application to the customer name, I see now, back, here we go. I see my customer ID. So the question is, how do I get there? When I just click on a row, I want to get my customer ID. And we have this very nice element which is called this triggering element. What does this give me? Let me go back to debug mode. And now when I click, I see, oh, I got this table row back. This is the output of my console. So when I click anywhere, I get the corresponding table row. So now it's the problem, how do I get the corresponding customer ID there? And normally I have to go back and forth and have to code and save and try it out. So I like this one thing that you can do inside the console. If you mark something, go to the console and you say $0, then you get exactly what you have marked right now, right? So this is a good starting point because right now you can simulate everything in the console. And let me show you something. So at the end, I say this. I can build up this selector, this nice jQuery selector, very fast inside the console and don't have to go back and forth into Apex. And when I'm finished there, I go back and paste the code into Apex and get my custom ID there. Takes a while, don't know why. Here we go. So $0 is your friend. It's very, very helpful when you try to get jQuery selectors. But don't forget $0. It sounds like a jQuery selector. It isn't. $0 just gives you back the pure DOM element. So let me go back and inspect it again.
Juergen, I think another way to put that is $0 is only available in the console. Do not put it in your code.
Yeah, it's available only in the console, but when I say $0, I don't get, you see, I don't get the brackets, and it means you have a pure DOM element right now. So no jQuery object. If you want to have a jQuery object out of it, just do a dollar around it. So $0, and so you got the jQuery object, and from there you see the brackets, and from there you can do very nice and very fast jQuery selectors. This was my tip.
So Juergen, if you go back to Page Designer,
yeah,
and go to the dynamic action where you're executing the JavaScript and focus in the code field, no, close the editor. So as long as you're focused in the code field, and now click on Help and the center, yeah. So here you'll get a reference to what's on this. It's not as detailed as what you can get in the console, and of course it's not going to have the actual values, but for quick reference, if you forget what's on this, just check the help there. And now, just to be a little nitpicky, I'm curious, and your selector there.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
So what is the children first child? How did that get in the mix?
I'm just playing around there. I'm not a pro. I'm just the way I'm passing through the DOM, right? This is the way I understand it.
So while we're kicking Juergen while he's down, just for complete, what you really should have used instead of attribute, you should have used data-my-customer-id, and then use the data function in jQuery.
Okay.
Just for completeness for people.
Yeah, it's just the way I do the things because I have to understand it.
Yep. Number one, make it work. Number two, make it correct.
Yeah. Okay, this was from my side. I would say let's start with questions, with the pre-posted questions. How do I cancel my screen sharing?
Just hit the stop button in the GoToMeeting control panel.
Control panel. Don't see a stop. Ah, here we go. Now I see you all again. So let's start with the first question submitted by Mahmoud Rabid. And he was asking, does jQuery mobile becomes less important the more responsive universal theme gets? So should we use more universal theme instead of jQuery mobile? I can say something about it because I have done 2 jQuery mobile applications for a customer, and it's nice, but if you have to get into details, you really have to understand jQuery mobile, and it's another layer. And we actually replaced both of the applications with the new universal theme, and you just have one application. It's very nice. Everything is working. The auto select, everything is working. You have one application. You have the color scheme and the theme roller and everything. So, and I did even an iPhone app with the universal theme. For me personally, I would say try with the universal theme first. I know we've got more code over the wire, but it's working fine. This is my opinion on that. Anybody else?
I would say this is really a discussion between responsive versus like native mobile, or getting close to it with what we can do with jQuery mobile. And I think the answer very generically is that it depends on your use case. I think more often than not, most folks are going to find that creating a single application that's responsive is by far the way to go. But again, depending on the use case, for example, Facebook and you know, these types of companies that their main line of business is through these applications, they're going to take a different approach and really develop a product that's fine-tuned for the platform, and so they're going to target mobile, and they're going to go past jQuery mobile, right? And they're going to do native mobile. So I think it really depends on the use case and the app. Is the app going to be used, you know, 90% of the time in mobile? If so, then you might want to focus and really customize the UI to cater to mobile. But I think for the majority of folks, responsive is just the way to go. Just one app, make it work across all devices.
Yep.
Yeah, I make the jump when you need to simplify, right? So let's say you've got an invoice management system you build, and it's got customer header, you know, details, terms, freight, all the other stuff on the header, and then the ability to add lines that have sophisticated discounts and things like that. Sometimes you can get as responsive as you want, and it's not going to cut it, right? You can't take a 7-column field and squish it down to fit on an iPhone. So in that case, you probably want to redesign it for mobile, and it might be easier to go the jQuery mobile route because, again, it's all about use case. And I think a lot of people forget this. If I'm in a coffee shop in line and I want to check on an invoice, I'm probably not going to try to do anything more sophisticated than just view the line, see the total, see if it's been paid, see if it's unpaid, who I contact if it isn't. That's a different approach and a different function than if I'm sitting behind a desk trying to negotiate with a customer and changing discounts and adding stuff and trying to upsell them and do things like that. So again, if the use case is, you know, just peek at the data, peek at a subset of the data, there's still a need, and I think, you know, it would make sense to go jQuery mobile. But if you're trying to build an invoice system that might be used on an 11-inch MacBook all the way up to a 27-inch display, you know, responsive is almost unquestionably the way to go in that case. So, you know, where are your users? What are they trying to do when they are where they are? And can they achieve it in one interface? And if the answer to that is no, they can't, then, you know, I think the jQuery mobile is worth a look.
But you started with a MacBook Pro and went up. I think, you know, the responsive UI can go further down even to handheld phones. You know, I think that's fair game, depending.
There's a couple things I'm going to add here, if I can. I think this is almost a religious debate. Although I think that the goal of responsive is ultimately to replace mobile, but I'll say a couple things about jQuery mobile. One is if you want it to look and act and feel similar to a native app, then obviously you're going to get that with jQuery mobile. Also, and I know Mark Zeus is on the line, and he might be able to correct me on this. There are gestures available in jQuery mobile that I don't think you can respond to. You can handle with just pure responsive. And also, I believe that jQuery mobile is a little more efficient when it comes to bandwidth. I don't think the bandwidth demands are as high as responsive. So those are things to consider.
Yeah. One other thing to add on that, and it has to do more with security. If you build a single app that, with the Apex session state, allows you to stay logged into that app for 8 hours and allows you to have an idle time of, say, 60 minutes, which is the 2 default settings, do you really want that type of wide setting duration on a device that's going to be used primarily for mobile interactions? I've never misplaced my laptop but I'll be honest, I've misplaced my phone, right? So now there's a funnel right into the system with the same privileges and the same everything that could be untouched for almost an hour, and I can get into the phone and access it, right? So security comes into play when some of these designs are considered as well. Now, sure, you can create a responsive app with smaller session windows, but now you're going to, tick off your desktop users who have to log in once an hour.
How is someone going to get into your phone, though, if not even the FBI can do that?
Dude, they totally got into it. 1, 2, 3, 4. You'd be amazed how many people don't have passcodes on their phones, though. I mean, I see it all the time. Or again, if you leave your phone, I've got my phone on, right, and I'm standing in line, all I got to do is grab it and run. Who cares if you have a passcode? You're still unlocked. I know I have your phone, and I'm good to go.
Okay, let me ask one other question from Saeed Hansanpur. One of the vital of ClickView software is maintained results of query in memory. It means to prepare some queries for dashboard before run. It can be maintained result queries. Oh, sorry, it's a long question. So the question is, now I want to know by ODTUG chat can be implemented that feature of ClickView. I have a little experience with ClickView. Actually, I learned it a couple of years ago because my customer used it and I was curious. And let me say this to ClickView, it's actually no database. It's just a C++ memory structure. And you cannot write into the database. It's just a big flat table, just one, like a big collection. And every time you load a new model, if you have to reload the data, all the users are kicked out. And the people who are, the default target are iPads, so they do 800 by 600 pixel applications, and you also see these 800, 600 pixels on a desktop. And if you want to do a desktop application, you have to do twice the application. Everybody needs to learn the application. It's a web application, but you really have to do at least an hour of training to operate with this web application. It's only running so far, as I know, back then on Microsoft Internet Application Server. It has expensive licenses. You need a separate hardware. So they often compare, oh, it's much faster. Yeah, sure, it's much faster because I'm on a database with hundreds of other applications and data load. Give me one separate server for my Apex application. I'm at least as fast. And the problem is it's a fixed framework. It's very hard to change something in the front end. And if you want to do something in the front end which is not prepared by this module, you have to code it in .NET. So it's a totally different thing, right? So I would say try, if you really have a problem with speed, do a nice pre-aggregation, try to really compare, get your own machine, and even try the 12C in memory feature. I had a workshop a couple of weeks ago. It's amazing. It's working. It's so easy. I only had 3 gigabytes. Only 3 gigabytes of in memory, and it's enough. My whole Apex application ran 3 times faster without doing anything, right? So I would say I didn't do anything in ClickView. So try in memory and try a good database model. Martin, do we have questions from the panel we can still ask?
Yeah, we're running short on time, so I'm gonna answer a few questions in very few words. So the first one was, does front-end Boost require Java EE container? No, it uses Node.js. The next question is, can you use front-end Boost on apex.oraclecorp.com? So I imagine this is from an internal Oracle employee. Yes, you can. You can use it on any single site. It, in theory, runs off your desktop essentially. For Xplug, there's a question for Xplug. How do you save your customizations after you clear the cache of the browser? Scott, do you have a quick answer?
You could save your own little definitions of the different colors that you change it to.
Okay. And that's pretty much all the questions we had
Right.
for today's podcast.
Perfect. Exactly 1 hour. Thanks. Thanks, everybody. And please let us know for the next show if you have questions. Just post them on the feedback of apex.world and let us know what you would like to hear from us. So should we do more questions, or let us know what you want to hear. So we try to get a new show out in May, hopefully. This is after Apex Connect, maybe something interesting to tell you, everybody. And yeah, see you soon. Thanks.
Thanks. See you.
Thank you.
Bye.